You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program where we dive deep into the other side of the derivatives fence. There we head on into the futures and indeed the options and some of the spot as well of what's trading over there on the crypto front, as well as, of course, the volatility, the skew, the term structure, unusual activity, all that good stuff and more every week here on the Crypto Rundown. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting The Options Insider Radio Network. Hopefully you guys are enjoying what you're hearing. Love to see the new people flocking into this show every week. It's been great for us just to see interesting new audiences. You know, our network always does well in the major financial centers and the derivatives hubs out there, but we love seeing interesting new earlobes coming into the network all the time from here, from overseas, and coming from non-traditional paths outside of the traditional financial venues, which a lot of people are coming to discover this show. Keep it up. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you leave a review in your platform of choice to help continue that flow of newcomers discovering the Crypto Rundown. And then from there, going on to learn about all these fun things called options that we talk about all the time here on the network as well. And of course, as always, send us your questions, your comments, your insights. We do indeed love to hear from you guys. And you guys like to hear from other people aside from just me on the network here. So without further ado, let's get right on into the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat. Like the man said, this is the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto and indeed beyond and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. Today's guest is a returning victim of the hot seat. I think he enjoyed it because he's back again. He is Pierce Crosby, the general manager over there at TradingView. Pierce, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown program.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Good to have you.
I think this time, though, we're doing it through the magic of technology, and you're not in the studio this time.
Yeah, no, doing it the comfort of my own residence here in New York City.
There you go, putting up the feet, kicking back with a nice beverage. Not that it's not fun in the studio as well, but it's always more comfortable from your own home. Well, Pierce, the last time you were with us was back in July of last year, so obviously we've seen a lot of interesting developments in the crypto space over the course of that period, and of course, you guys have been up to a lot in the realm of TradingView as well. So maybe let's start there. Catch us up. What's been going on in the world of TradingView since the last time we chatted?
Yeah. No, thanks. Again, thanks for having me, Mark. And no, I appreciate coming back and giving you guys an update and Obviously, lots happened for us as well as the markets overall. High level, things are good. Business is booming, if you will. And, we obviously are expanding capabilities across the board, not just in the crypto world, but, across all markets. And so, it's been kind of fast paced, and we're trying to keep our head above water, but a lot of new things coming up for sure.
Well, you guys have certainly been expanding in the crypto area as well, including onboarding a few new firms, including some who've been on this program not too long ago, like Gemini and others. So it sounds like you guys have really been, since the last time we chatted, really been doubling down on allowing people to really access, because obviously that's something we chatted about the last time you were here on the network is, of course, the analysis, the charting, the analytics is one thing, but eventually people want to be able to click that trade button, right? And that's always the crux, the intersection, the crossroads that a lot of the analytics platforms get to is how do we accommodate that? Do we become a broker? Do we connect to other platforms? There's a lot of different ways you can go, and all of them are fraught with their own different challenges. So it sounds like you guys have expanded that offering. Walk us through who are some of the new platforms you guys can access on the TradingView platform now, for at least from a crypto perspective.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, thanks for bringing it up. And no, I mean, my background, in a previous life, I worked at a company called StockTwits, and, we had this same philosophy kind of, does it make sense for us to become a actual trading platform versus, being a network? And, here at TradingView, the website is so global these days that it's quite hard to kind of jump on board in the actual trading side of the world because, you can imagine having to deal with regulators around the world would be a whole business in itself. And so for us, it really made the most sense to kind of partner with firms who specialize in the trading side of things. And so that's what we've been working on recently. Yeah, I think since we chatted last time, probably two of the biggest partnerships that we've been rolling out on the crypto side of things. The first and foremost being Gemini, which actually just came out last week. And so any user of TradingView can actually now transact through Gemini directly from their favorite charts on TradingView. And I think, as rightly put, we kind of want to be the analysis, the charting platform, the kind of place where people, hang out all day. But, at some point in time, you actually need to put money out there. And so we've done a ton of analysis of the space and different partners. And, Gemini really is kind of the best example of a very, very secure, bank almost like platform that really, provides that end-to-end encryption so that, data isn't lost anywhere or any kind of nefarious activity can kind of take place. And so, they were really a target for us for some time to work with. And, now that we've really built them in, we're starting to see that, the scale of TradingView's kind of crypto community starting to coalesce around the Gemini integration. And so that's a big one. And then we have another one coming up soon. I can't say too much about it, but it really, it does kind of, stem back to the core thinking, as you rightly put, we got to have trading partners because we're not a exchange or a broker ourselves. So, but yeah, it's been a long time in the works, and we're finally happy to kind of roll it out across the platform. People are going pretty crazy for it.
You mentioned the scale of that crypto community on TradingView. I want to dive into that a little bit because it is an interesting thing to explore. You guys obviously cut your teeth as a charting platform for broad equities and indices and things, but that purpose has definitely grown. In fact, I'm on TradingView right now. I just pulled it up, and the first thing I see is crypto ideas right there on the homepage below all the tickers, which include a broad array of assets, including Bitcoin over there. So how important, how big has crypto become to you guys? Would you say, certainly it seems like you're leading with it these days. Has it become a very big community for you guys?
Well, all asset classes grow at their own speed, right? I think that, back in the day, these guys were super, ahead of the curve in terms of onboarding a lot of the early data feeds from the crypto world. I think we actually have a feed from way back when Mt. Gox was around in 2014, 2015. But it's always been kind of a part of the story of TradingView. We've tried to keep our hands kind of in all markets and not kind of favor one or the other. But recently I'd say a lot of growth is indeed crypto related. And people really flock to the platform because not only do we provide charts, but we're really kind of taking it to that next step of in-depth analysis and kind of a strong network of people who really care about the asset to kind of coalesce with every day. And that that does drive really the crypto world anyways. And so people are kind of taking that next step of deep dive research on top of our platform. And so, in total, I can say it's about, crypto is probably about 35% or 40% of our total traffic. And that reflects kind of the scale of the community. Month to month, we're doing close to 13 million monthly active users. And so these are people coming from all over the web and all over the world. We have traffic in whether it's India, Japan, Singapore, Australia, US, Canada, UK, et cetera. And so, but people really kind of, go to certain parts of TradingView to kind of find their tribe or find their community. And yeah, almost 40% of them are kind of coalescing around the crypto side of the world. So that's been pretty constant. And I think really from 2017 onward, we became kind of the place to come if you wanted to get that next step of analysis and research.
Wow, so closing in on half of your traffic is on the crypto side. That's larger than I thought, but that certainly shows where the interest is these days. Would you say the lion's share of the rest is your traditional, shall we say, equities, your Apple, SPYs, Facebooks, that sort of thing? Is that where the lion's share of the rest are coming for?
Well, funny enough, the first real business or kind of traction that TradingView got was over in Europe. They're very strong in the FX world. And that's because, the data streaming kind of capabilities of TradingView really lends itself to the FX world, which is, really tick by tick, if you will. And so kind of the capabilities on the data side brought in a lot of the FX world. And that was kind of our first base hit. The U.S. equities business grew pretty steadily. And we've tried to continue to compound on that by, providing more services, more research. We've embedded a lot of new data sets like fundamentals data, in addition to, standard price feeds and volume feeds and all this stuff. But I think that, they all kind of grow at their own rates. But no, we do have some of the fandom, if you will, kind of the big names. I think obviously like a good example last week is Tesla, right? Everybody on TradingView is chatting about Tesla and, who's taking the other side of the trade or, who's looking at the options book or what have you. And those communities all thrive as well in conjunction with the crypto world.
Tesla, it's inescapable. It even makes it onto the crypto program. You can't escape the gravitational pull that is Tesla these days. And we can't escape breaking down some Bitcoin and everything else. So without further ado, let's keep on rolling right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, let's get into it. Of course, the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is going on the world's still largest digital asset out there, the number one marketplace, of course, Bitcoin. Coming into showtime, it's been yet another good week for the bulls, even though a little bit of a turnaround here in the last 24 hours or so. We saw the rally get north of the 10,000 level coming into showtime. It's dropped back off that a little bit off. It was off nearly 4%, now off about a little over 2, about 2.25%. Still hovering close to that 10,000 level, right about 98, 40 odd, 44 or so out there. So that puts it up, not quite 600 handles from our last show, about 560, but still a good run out there over the last few weeks for the crypto bulls. Some people are speculating what's driving it down. Today, we've seen continued consternation over Libra, potentially the Fed getting into the digital asset game as well. Maybe just some of the concerns over the pandemic impacting accounts and shareholders, or I should say, token and coin holders over there in Asia. Maybe just a mix of all of the above, some profit taking, whatever reason. We're off a little bit today, but net on the week, which is how we look at it week to week here on the show. Bitcoin having yet another good week out there. In fact, it's been on such a run of late. One of our buddies here on the network, Mr. Russell Rhodes, I call him the once and future Dr. Vic. Someday he'll get his doctorate, and then he could truly be a Dr. Vic's. But he actually tweeted out to celebrate Bitcoin topping 10,000. He actually broke it down by market cap, where Bitcoin would rank around some of the biggest companies out there right now. And it comes in, looks like right around 30, tied with the 30th to 31st, really, right between 30 and 31st. So it's right between Boeing, which is about 189 billion, and then Bitcoin coming in at about 184 billion. Remember, we said before, take the overall market cap numbers out there in the crypto space with a bit of a grain of salt. There's some consternation about how accurate they are. I think the overall rankings, we'll get to that when we get to our top 10 a little bit. Overall rankings are useful. The overall market cap, maybe not so much, but it's fun and interesting to say the least. Then, of course, we get down a little bit further to get to where Ether is. That's at about 25 billion at the time that he posted this, which puts it between right above ResMed Inc. at number 247 there on the top 500 companies from market cap. So Bitcoin would come between Boeing and Adobe, and ETH would come between Ball Corp and ResMed. So there you go. If you're wondering how it stacks up out there from an overall volume and indeed market cap perspective. But Pierce, let's start there. Since the last time you've been on, we've seen a lot of evolution in the price of Bitcoin, and of course, recently once again threatening and then breaking through that all important psychological level of 10,000. You guys are obviously have a very active community on the charting and technical analysis perspective. So something like Bitcoin breaking through 10,000 was probably a pretty big moment over there on the TradingView platform. What kind of response did you see from the community? Did you see an influx of more traffic on the crypto side as a result of hitting that new level? And what have you kind of seen evolution-wise over the last 7 or so months since we chatted?
Yeah, no, it's a definitely a great question. I think one thing that in looking back, just how we've kind of performed over the last 6 months to a year. When I was on the show last, I think we were right around the same exact price. It's something in the range of 1,100, and so the last 6 or 7 months has been kind of a I wouldn't say flat market. There's definitely been a lot of volatility, and generally speaking, if you mark this to the equities world, you could say that Bitcoin is massively volatile compared to your standard S&P 500 companies, right? And it's funny that Russell Rhodes did this kind of comparison, right? Because I think immediately what strikes me is just how volatile any of these assets might be versus kind of the daily moves that you see in crypto across the board, right? When I'm trading, something like Adobe, I don't expect to see a 3% move on a daily basis, but here in the crypto world, we still see pretty regularly pretty large turnover. And no, I mean, I think that over the last year we have seen kind of some coalescing around not just Bitcoin, but kind of the top 10 assets, these kind of bigger brands and bigger name coins or cryptocurrencies across the platform. But the 10,000 level. I would say, there was a moment where, especially in the technical analysis side of the community, the 10K number, rather than being kind of support, was really seen as a resistance number. And so what everybody was, really kind of planning on was that kind of drop back once it kind of hit the 10K mark. And you see that across the board because I think, we've been kind of below the 10K range close to 5 months, something like that. And so really, when those numbers do hit, there is that kind of headline component, right? The CNBCs of the world are going to kind of, scream from the mountaintops, oh my God, Bitcoin back at 10K. And so as a result, you do see people kind of piling back in some way, shape or form. And I think what we saw across the platform was really, this is a, buy the rumor, sell the news, kind of when they hit these historical numbers, it's a great opportunity to kind of use that resistance to your advantage and kind of look for more immediate downside. And I'm surprised. I mean, since we hit that number, I think that was Sunday, maybe Saturday. We've dropped back a couple hundred dollars here, but I think that it's, actually remaining pretty strong overall. And I think probably a little less of a fall off than we were expecting, just from, looking at the network and seeing kind of traders on TradingView really expected, kind of a sharp drawback to 95 or something like that. But we have stayed pretty consistent throughout. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the next leg up is when these levels kind of hit, you have that rippling effect. And, over the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll see, did that 10K really make its way around to the mom and pop investors, or are there really kind of only a few people that are actually watching these levels? And we might think we have a ton of people on TradingView talking about this, but Bitcoin's a global story, and so really how many people are kind of piling in after the fact is always kind of interesting to see. And it really just depends on how big of a story we think 10K is. So it's an important number overall, but yeah, I mean the size of the move is relatively small versus kind of where we've been over the last 6 months or so. It's been kind of trading in a pretty tight range versus the all-time highs back in the day.
That's always the challenge, right? Is trying to determine how much of what's going on, what you're seeing, is just because you're preaching to the choir. You obviously have a very active technical community on TradingView. We obviously speak to a very options-centric audience. We have a similar challenge sometimes. Are we just looking at from the bubble, get outside the options bubble a little bit, see what these things mean to the broader financial markets and indeed the broader investing public? Interesting to see that a lot of the TradingView folks, at least the smart kids in the back of the room, as they like to probably think of themselves, were fading that, which is kind of interesting, and it looks like so far at least that was the right play. We'll see if we can rebound here soon back above that 10,000 level. Of course, a little bit of movement has been a little bit of volatility, not so much though from an overall realized 30-day realized. Now again, a lot of these metrics coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at skew.com, SKEW.com. Good place to go for a lot of crypto volatility, all that fun stuff, to skew all the things you guys like to sink your teeth into. On the options side, we know you're out there, so we don't mind bringing it to you there. So they actually realized volatility actually down a little bit over the last 30 days, which is kind of interesting. It was threatening about 60% to the upside, now down about 52%. Not a huge move, but still, it's been in that 50-odd% range for a while. That's kind of where we're hanging out. Like I said before on the show, we're clearly moving enough in the broad Bitcoin to justify these levels, so we haven't seen a ton of fluctuation. Same thing with the implied. Implied has ticked up a little bit since our last show. It's up to about 58%, but it's right around where it was, 56% last week. So we haven't seen huge moves on the vol side from a Bitcoin, because we're moving enough to justify these levels. If we see that calming down, or we see bigger moves that are more outlandish, we'll see those numbers change. But for now, we're hovering in this mid 50% odd range on both of them, and we kind of been there for a little while. In terms of volume, what's lighting it up? Let's look at Deribit, still one of the leading platforms out there, even though more and more are coming online. We had the folks from CME on the TWIFO program last week who head up the Bitcoin options, so you guys check that out if you're interested. What's going on that platform and how maybe that one's slowly ticking in. We'll get to that in a little bit, but the options on Deribit, they've been lighting it up over the course of the past week. We say for a while we like to use that 30 million notional as kind of a bit of a benchmark for whether it was an active day on Deribit, and they pretty much have blown the doors off that pretty much every day since our last show. In fact, our last show day of the third was the laggard of the week, only 49 million. Every other day was much higher than that. The fourth, 69 million. The fifth was the highlight of the week, 107 million. The sixth, so 76 million. The seventh, 94 million. The eighth, 63 million, and the ninth, so yesterday, 87 million. So far, 81 million on the tape coming into showtime today. So it's been a very active week on the Bitcoin options front. Not sure if that's just the price action driving a lot more people to the space, because we've seen similar psychological levels get broken before, and we haven't seen commensurate volume on the Deribit platform. Maybe something else is afoot. Maybe these new products coming online is driving more play in the Deribit options. Either way, something is driving a lot of paper out there. And in terms of what was the big print out there on Deribit land this week, looks like a bit of a 1x2. It was a Feb 8,000, 8,500 put 1x2. Went up on the 3rd actually, so a week ago. Pretty much right during our show. All these big trades always go up during our shows. I'm not sure why that is. Looks like the paper doing 400 of the 8,000 puts versus 200 of the 8,500 puts. So doing it maybe perhaps the opposite of the way you might think of it. But either way, interesting there. That was done when Bitcoin was right around 9,300, about 9,278. I don't have the sides as to how they were doing that one, but that was kind of the larger print we saw out there. A lot of smaller prints, but it was a very active week, obviously, so you can kind of read the tea leaves for yourselves and see exactly how much was going on. A lot of it out there, but funky 1x2s. Don't see too many of those going up out there, which kind of was why it came across our radar. In terms of skew, we're getting pretty low down there, down to about minus 11%. That's not that far from the lowest they've seen it in the 1 month skew over there on skew. That's easy to say. 1 month skew on skew, skew.com. Let's see, it was a minimum of about minus 14.3%, so not that far away from it, off quite a bit even from last week. So seeing a little bit more of that quote-unquote negativity creeping into that Bitcoin skew. I remember that's the 50 delta skew, 25 delta put, 25 delta call out there. Speaking of the calls are still leading the dance out there, 64% on the call side in terms of overall open interest right now on the call front. So still call-driven market, but maybe a little bit less. We have seen puts swing in there a few times. I haven't so much this week. If we continue this retreat from 10,000, that may indeed change. Same deal out here on the open interest front. We're seeing pretty decent numbers across the board. Deribit still the leader out there. Open interest about 626 million out there right now. That's up from our last show. It's pretty much up, like I said, for all these different venues. We're seeing LedgerX up to about 45 million. That's also up a bit as well. Backed on the options front up to almost 250,000. So all you asking about what's going on the backed crypto options, still kind of languishing, but ticking up. It was 100 some odd thousand, I think, last week. So any increase is a good one. CME also ticking up. Their OI is now up to about 9.8 million worth of notional. Again, I remember I had Tim McCourt from CME on the TWIFO program last week. I gave him a hard time about quoting notional, and here we are doing it again. That's just kind of the way it's still done in the crypto space. I'm looking forward to when the contracts get a little bit beefier over there, we can start talking contracts. But we have seen the contract volume ticking up out there in CME land as well. We saw almost 50 contracts going up. I believe it was last Monday or Tuesday around that time frame, and we've seen the notional ticking up as well. Notional over 2 million a couple of times here this past week, and the contract volume getting up there as well. So, remember we talked about the early days of those CME Bitcoin options launching. It wasn't a lot of papers, about 54 contracts on the launch day. That was a sharp contrast to about the nearly 14,000 contracts that the futures had done the day before. So some people were a little bit disappointed with those numbers. Also, we saw some weird prints in there, deep in the money, 50, 60,000 strike puts going up for effectively parity and carry plays. So there was some weird stuff afoot. It seems like that's starting to filter out more people are being able to access this. I'm curious for you, Pierce, your TradingView community, you guys obviously reach out to the broad technical analysis community across a broad swath of products, equities, commodities, FX, you mentioned, and of course, crypto. What kind of a story has the launch of these new Bitcoin options on a platform like CME, which is obviously a big financial powerhouse? Has that gotten a lot of traction for them? Are they interested? Are they starting to maybe look at the futures more and do more technical analysis as a result? Are they trading them more, or are they still more into the Deribit? Are they still maybe not as deep into the derivatives side? How much of a big deal, or perhaps lack thereof, have these products been for them?
No. I mean, the sophistication of a lot of these traders is definitely taken a few steps forward since probably last we spoke. I do know Deribit is actually a very household name for the users across TradingView. I'd say a lot of the more standard contract types, I mean, CME is such a massive firm, and so it's still surprising to me just relatively how small kind of things are moving from that futures point of view. But no, I mean, probably the most common swap product is BTC over standard FX and kind of using a little bit of kind of FX hedge where they're holding it overnight, but maybe not taking big positions on it. But overall, I'd say really the standard product still remains is just buying it straight up, and I think that a lot of folks who want to employ leverage across the board, it's still the easiest way to go. It's just really just go straight to the market, and it doesn't help that when you think about the actual cost, if you will, from a contract perspective, most of the straight money kind of over the counter products are really coming down to being basically free. And I think when we think of a lot of the futures products or swap products, they do come with kind of some implied costs. So from a trader's perspective, you might get some kind of additional value in that forward-looking contract, but the structure of the availability of these is still kind of far from what it is when you just go direct to a broker dealer and just buy the buy the coin or buy the currency straight up. And I mean, we see a ton of volume related to kind of some of the biggest brokers you can imagine. And so, I could probably say like a Binance or a Gemini. We just see a ton of equity plays just purely because you can just put in large volume and more or less you're not locking yourself in for a specific point in time. So from a trader's perspective, it's, when it comes to liquidity and getting things in and out as quickly as you possibly can, most people are, just going straight to the market. And it seems to be kind of the de facto behavior, if you will. Comparatively, it's really interesting, actually. This just came up last week when we're talking about the futures market is, the CME micros, unrelated to the whole crypto world. But, when we talk about kind of the TradingView network and what people are adopting across the board, the scale of, chatter that we're getting around the micros has been really interesting. And I didn't really even know how big of a launch this thing was. But, I think that in terms of that product market fit, right, like traders that really want to use a forward contract, we just see a ton of volume around that versus kind of the equivalent on the crypto side of things. And so, I could say that that's definitely something we see as an indicator of overall kind of investor interest more recently, for sure.
That's interesting because I was just having that conversation with Tim, who runs the equity complex as well as the crypto complex over there at CME just a few days ago in our TWIFO program, and I brought that up to him as well. Just how surprising it has been to me, and it sounds like from talking to him, it has been internally as well. How explosive those micros have been. I don't think anyone saw that coming out of the gate. It sounds like that was the case over there on TradingView as well. That brings up an interesting question. We talked a little bit about how big the crypto community is on TradingView. I'm just curious for my own edification over there. Obviously, you mentioned cutting your teeth also in the FX space, so that would imply at very least some futures and maybe, like you mentioned, some swaps. How big is the overall derivatives, the options and futures community on TradingView these days?
Yeah, like I said, it's the first network, if you will. We have a ton of sub networks on TradingView, kind of like I call them tribes, but you could call them kind of like subgroupings of the overall platform. The FX world was pretty big around, I'd say around 2012 to 2015. It was kind of the dominant platform. And, what's funny actually is U.S. regs got a little more stringent on leverage rates. And in the U.S., it kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. And I think that has to do with just kind of the state of, some of the leverage rules and requirements. So it was a much bigger component piece. Today we see futures and the whole commodity side of things as being much more dominant. I think that's because there's probably a lot of parallels to other hard assets, as well as things like coins, et cetera. So there's a lot of kind of translation between the futures world and the crypto world. And I think that, since we have such a large scaled crypto network today, like I said, when they're thinking about more kind of complex products, et cetera, futures is kind of a natural transition. But they're playing more equity futures and commodities futures rather than the crypto futures themselves. I think they just trade the crypto straight up rather than kind of buying contracts on a forward basis. But the derivative space, I'd say we don't do a ton of options, so really it does focus around the futures world. It's about 25% of our kind of traffic or user growth or business. The kind of core metrics that you think of, we generally rank it about a fourth of the total. And that's been pretty constant. It doesn't grow super fast because you got to be kind of above your average pay grade to be trading kind of advanced products. But no, it's a slow and steady business, and these are the more hardcore guys that are kind of trading kind of forward contracts internationally and looking at a much bigger swath of instruments, not just your average retail equities trader or mom and pop investor, if you will. These guys are kind of taking it to the next level. So that's kind of how we think about it in terms of the total scale. And we really try to build business around our core component pieces, which is the equities, crypto, and futures businesses. Those are really kind of the the core pillars, if you will, of the overall.
Interesting. Let's get to some of those futures then, and the crypto side, the intersection of crypto and indeed futures. I mentioned the CME futures doing decent paper this week, not quite as robust as it has been the last couple of weeks. It looks like about almost 7,000 on the tape coming into today, 9,000 on Friday, about 13,000 on Thursday, 15,000 Wednesday was the big day of the week. Tuesday about 8,000 and Monday about 9,200. But overall, that volume has been ticking up, which does make it kind of interesting. And we talked about this again. Check out our 24 program last week. Why there is such a disconnect between the futures and the options, and why the options still haven't hit. That. Certainly not going to hit the ground running with 10,000 contracts, but maybe a little more than 50. It's starting to trickle up there, so that's kind of an interesting story to watch. The backed futures, a similar story like our old friend, the backed volume bot there, and he just tweeted out yesterday the overall volume for the month there from the backed Bitcoin monthly futures, say that 5 times fast, was about 73 million, puts it down about 3%, and max OI is right about 16 million. That puts it up actually 36%. So OI ticking up even if the overall volume a little bit down out there. And let's see. A lot of other things to dive into today, so let's keep on rolling and explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down what's going on in the other side of the crypto fence, which is, of course, everything outside of Bitcoin until this top 10, which we do right now, which is, unfortunately has to include Bitcoin by default because it's still number one there on the old overall market cap. Again, take these numbers with a bit of a grain of salt. Right around close to 180 billion, pretty close to when Russell tweeted about it last week. That Bitcoin was at 98.15 at this time, so a little bit lower as it's going to be. Number 2, ETH, right around 24.25 billion. Number 3, XRP, ticking up a little bit of late. We'll get to that in a bit. Nearly 12 billion, about 11.9 billion. Number 4, Bitcoin Cash, about 8.2 billion. Number 5, Bitcoin XSV, 6.4 billion. Let's just do the whole top 10. Why not? Number 6, Litecoin. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, about 4.7 billion. Number 7, Tether, about 4.6 billion. Number 8, EOS, 4.6 billion, so a little bit of a tie there for 7 and 8. Number 9, Binance Coin, with about almost 4 billion. And number 10, Tezos, ticking Cardano and some of the others out of the top 10 this week, up to about 1.7, almost 1.8 billion. Pierce, we touched on altcoin before on the program. We touched on a little bit how you guys said you're starting to expand into others. Is ETH the clear number 2 for you guys, or what are some of the other altcoin that are lighting up the crypto segment on TradingView these days?
No, it's a great question. I think, definitely ETH still kind of holds that second slot for us. It's funny that, XRP is still so big. We really do not see that kind of traffic on TradingView. I think across the Twitterverse, you have kind of the loosely what they define themselves as the XRP army, and it's kind of these it's amazing because the parallels to some of the more traditional equities world, where you have this fandom or fanboy kind of aspect, whether it's Apple, Tesla, blah, blah, blah. You see the same thing around XRP. In terms of a tradable asset, people don't really think of it as a primary place of interest. We really, have to look at what we think of as, tradable. And that's really the ground truth from a trading viewpoint of view is, like which assets can you actually, not just believe in, but, get behind in terms of a trade. Interesting enough, Binance Coin, we do see a lot of traffic around that. We pull in some interesting feeds from Binance today. They have some futures products as well as some over-the-counter products. But the coin itself does really, reflect, I guess, kind of the scale of Binance as a network today. They do get a lot of heat. They get a lot of traction in terms of kind of the chatter on TradingView overall. Interestingly, not listed here is the whole Tether is up there as well. So Tether is something that we've been watching more recently as it kind of relates to this guy Justin Sun and his own kind of Tron coin or whatever. Tether to me it seems like is kind of more established. But the Tron thing, I really don't know what to make of it. It has a lot of people talking on TradingView, but not sure whether or not we're looking at a positive sentiment or negative sentiment. Definitely a lot of volatility across the board. People really don't know, what is the future of this product? Does this guy really represent something that's differentiated and forward-looking and actually really has a long-term future, or is this kind of like a pet project and kind of a way for a guy to generate a ton of cash and then potentially cash out or do something else with it? And funny enough, he was last week. A ton of kind of chatter around. He went to dinner with Warren Buffett, I guess, and brought some other executives with him. Some guys from eToro, in fact, but. So, yeah, we don't know. It's an interesting one, and people are definitely chatting about it pretty much the last 2 weeks as it's relevant to kind of current events.
One of the things I like when I bring guys like you onto the platform, we have some data to look at it. You always come armed with, there's always some esoteric altcoin that probably we're not talking about here on the show that is percolating up in their community. Maybe people are talking about it, are excited. Would that maybe be Tron for you guys right now? Or maybe you're talking about Binance Coin before, or are there maybe other even smaller outside of the top 10 that we're seeing right now, market cap coins that are starting to gain some traction, you would say, on the TradingView community?
I think that in terms of the other ones that we do know have a lot of traction recently, I'd say Stellar is one that's definitely been driving a lot of traction. Just digging into the very high level metrics I'm looking at right here across the platform. Let's see. Tether is very large. Tether and Litecoin in terms of traffic overall. We see a lot of traffic around those two, followed by, Stellar and Cardano. I don't know much about Cardano. I wish I actually had done a ton of research prior. We could go through each of these, but there's so many to keep track of. It's always kind of absolutely mind bending in terms of the number of coins that are coming up and kind of new to the market, if you will. So I think Cardano seems to be a trade that people have been taking the last week or so. I'm not sure what they do per se, but in terms of a tradable asset, people are definitely on board with the contract. And it looks in terms of the swap, people are trading Cardano Tether US. So not actually trading the underlying, kind of dollar, but really the Tether coin as it's linked to Cardano, right? And so that just speaks wonders to the power of kind of these notional coins, right? They match the kind of dollar value, but you never actually have to, transact back to fiat. You can keep it within inside of the crypto world. So a lot of people trade, kind of straight, kind of US dollar to a given currency, cryptocurrency. But in terms of related to Cardano, people are trading other assets as it's relative to Cardano. And that's kind of a big thing on TradingView is all these little arbitrages between coins. And, say if something like Bitcoin moves 3% a day, but Cardano moves, 2.75%, it makes sense to actually trade those two together versus trade back to the kind of base or US dollar or something like that equivalent. So yeah, that's another interesting one that I just pulled up, and we really track these based on just the number of people that are chatting about all these on a given day.
That's the fun of the altcoin universe. It's always expanding. There's always new coins and new tokens and new digital assets to discuss. That's the challenge also of a segment like this. We can probably do a whole show just getting into the weeds. Of course, we like to focus on the derivatives side as well, and for that, it's still a clear number two is, of course, ETH out there. Another strong week for ETH, up about 35 handles from our last show. So the rally continues out there, even though it's come off a little bit today, just like Bitcoin and everything else crypto has today. But over the course of the past week, still up strong. Let's look at some of the metrics out there. The number two overall options market, obviously still ETH out there. 30-day realized down slightly. Again, kind of a similar story to what we're seeing in Bitcoin. We're seeing enough price action to keep us at around this 80% level. We're down a little bit now. It was 81% last week. Now it's 77% this week on the 30-day realized, 30-day implied. Similar story, up a bit. It was about 75% last week, about 84% this week. Still both firmly around that 80-odd% range. Call the put up a little bit as well, up to about 71% from 65%. Not surprising. We did rally a bit over the course of the past week, just a wee bit. So seeing the calls outpacing the puts, not exactly surprising. What has also outpaced is the volume. The ADV has grown since our last show. It's about 1.8 million last year. Now it's up to about 2.5 million. So the volume out there, still a pale shadow to what we're seeing out there on the Bitcoin front, but definitely growing. 2.5 million, nothing to sneeze at. The volume over the course of the past week, particularly on platforms like Deribit, spiked quite a bit as well. We saw nearly 9 million worth of notional going up on the 7th, about 8.7 million out there. In the 9th, nearly 5 million, about 4.8 million. So pretty strong volume over the course of the past week. That's in keeping with what we saw out there in Bitcoin as well. So it's been an active week for the derivatives pretty much across the board on the crypto front. The skew, again, this is 1 month skew. That's down as well, down to about minus 6.8%. So it's kind of also similar to what we're seeing out there on the Bitcoin front. OI also up, not surprisingly. It was 34 million in the last show. This week it's up to about 48 million right now. Big prints out here. It looks like we saw what looks like a bit of another more funky ratio put spreads all going up on the same day. We talked about some weird prints last week as well. The Feb 200s and 180 puts were both pretty active going up. We saw the biggest print was selling 999 of the Feb 180 puts. And then we saw also 650 lots and 609 lots going up of the 200 puts and also 180 puts again, respectively. It was like maybe someone on the 20th. So that was, on the 20th, on the 7th of February this past week. So that's right when ETH was right around 221. A lot of these prints went up. So maybe legging into ratio puts, and ratio put spreads may be rolling a bit as well with some house money. But ratio put spreads seem to be the order of the day in both Bitcoin and ETH options. Moving on to Ripple, another good week for Ripple. Kind of interesting, you're not seeing a lot of XRP love over there on the TradingView platform, Pierce, because it certainly is still up there in the market cap and it still gets a lot of headlines and a lot of interest. And I know anecdotally in our crypto community that comes to us, a lot of people are still interested in Ripple, even though it isn't really an option story yet. It's still, not even 30 cents. Up another 2 cents this week, though, so getting a little bit firmer, getting close to that magical, mythical 30-cent level that everyone thought was a floor for so long and would never break through. It's been well below that for quite some time. But getting back up there again, up to about 27, a little over 27 cents right now. So a little bit healthier over the course of the past week. Bitcoin Cash, also a little bit more robust, up about 70 handles. That one's been moving from our last show. Something similar to Bitcoin SV, also up about 70 handles. So it's been a good run over the course of the past week. Also been a good run for your questions. Let's get some of those on now with a little bit of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, let's get a few of your questions here on the show before we wrap up. Let's start off with the creatively named NKLV. NKLV wants to know, are people starting to trade the CME Bitcoin more? Well, I'm assuming you mean the options because the futures have been around for a little bit. If you mean the futures, we just talked about it. The answer is yes, they're continually growing in ADV all the time. The options also doing better than they were. They started off pretty light, 54 contracts, and they got a lot lighter. There were days with like 3, 5, 7, 10, maybe 20 contracts. So overall volume wasn't really lighting it up. It's starting to accrete a little bit more. I think some of that also is behind the scenes. The brokers have to start listing these and getting the quotes out and disseminating these. There's a lot of behind the scenes details that always have to happen whenever you launch a new product. But it seems like, and I just talked about the notional value as well, it seems like it's starting to trend in the right direction, even though it is indeed a pale shadow of what we're seeing out there on the Bitcoin futures. And Pierce, we kind of just addressed this, but for our listener here, NKLV, it sounds like your community there in TradingView still not hugely on board with the CME options. They're kind of playing the wait and see game, Pierce.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely. I think that this guy's rightly questioning, when are we going to see that kind of contract volume start coming in? Across the board, we don't see a ton of chatter around it today. And I think as you rightly mentioned, in a lot of cases, this really will be a story of when that technology really comes to the average investor, right? So, today it's a bit difficult to go out and find these contracts in a kind of over the market format. You really got to go to a couple broker dealers who actually, run this volume. And so I think as these, technologies, become more widespread, you could expect larger kind of daily notional or daily volumes overall. But, I mean, it's not something that everybody has yet. So if I'm to go to my, Coinbase account or something like that, when am I actually going to be able to buy the CME Bitcoin future? And I don't really know if that's actually in their roadmap. And so I think in a lot of cases, it'll be dependent on the technology being adopted by the broker dealer side of the house. But we'll see. We'll see when that actually comes to be. I mean, fingers crossed this year, but maybe in the coming.
Speaking of broker dealers, the next question comes from J Andrew, or maybe just Jandro. They want to know, which mainstream broker do you think is most active on the crypto front? We get flavors of this question all the time. I'm assuming by mainstream you mean your large TDs, your Schwabs, not just some of the crypto exchanges / brokers we've had on the show in the past, like your LedgerX's and your Coinbases and all the other ones out there, Gemini as well. So we're going to go the larger firms people have probably heard of. This is an interesting question. If you had asked me a few months back, I probably would have leaned towards TD. We saw them being very aggressive on the crypto front. They obviously were big players and still, as far as we know, are big players and investors in crypto ventures like ErisX. They were getting front and center. They really seem to be embracing that. I think it's an open question now how the Schwab merger is going to impact that. A lot of people are asking that question. I asked that of the ErisX folks themselves a few weeks ago here on this program. I don't know if we have a clear answer to that yet. I think it's fair to say that Schwab overtly less open and interested in the crypto space than TD clearly was. So that may dampen down some of that enthusiasm. So I don't know if I would be as gung-ho to say TD right now. Plus the platform's going through a merger that always tends to gum up the works for quite some time. Other big platforms, you can trade the listed stuff, the CME futures on platforms like IB and others out there. I'm sure, Pierce, you guys obviously have partnerships with a lot of these different firms, and you get asked and see different versions of this question on your platform all the time. These days, where do you think is the best spot for folks to hang their hat from a brokerage perspective when it comes to crypto?
Yeah, no, it's a great one. I think it rolls perfectly into that last question, right? Because we're basically talking about, when do they adopt the technology, and then once they have the technology, it's a matter of distribution, right? And really, kind of who has the massive scale. I think TD would definitely be the likely choice in my mind. If we rewind something like 6 months, but I mean, yeah, it's a huge question for me too. I mean, with the future of rolling into a much larger banking kind of broker firm, which Schwab is, they have a ton of kind of institutional grade products and banking products, and they probably, much like a lot of the traditional banks, don't really want to have their fingers too far into the crypto world, and so. Who kind of benefits from that? I think everybody that's below the two definitely benefit from that slowdown. And so I would expect kind of the tier 2 guys to start putting kind of bigger steps into the space. I think that a lot of folks have been asking just, in terms of E-Trade strategy and kind of how deep they're going to get into the space as kind of a hedge or kind of adoption of new products. And could that actually help, build them back up as the de facto, independent, second tier brand now that, TD and Schwab make up this kind of mega broker. But, I think that what we're probably going to see rather than, these traditional equity brokers getting bigger into the crypto world, I think it's almost better to look at it from the opposite way, right? Like which crypto brokers are really becoming quote unquote mainstream for the average kind of retail trader, right? I think that, going back to the Gemini story, they really approached us from a perspective of, listen, we want to take this to the, kind of the mom and pop investors and really actually make crypto kind of accessible for a mass market. And, historically they've been very focused on the institutional world as, they've built this kind of bank mentality for the crypto space and, custodying assets of, the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so, their strategy now is, how can we actually provide something for the average investor? And with the kind of level of security and compliance that is expected from a traditional crypto broker or from a traditional equities broker, that is. So that, I think that's probably a good bet as well, as look at, who's going to be more mainstream on the crypto side. I think that, Coinbase is definitely someone to keep track of because, they're now at a very established point of view. And I think that there's a lot of folks over there that are really kind of brainstorming on what comes next. And so to become kind of a mainstream brand, much like a Robinhood is, right? I think that is kind of a core focus for them. So rather than think of, the equities guys, becoming the established player on the crypto side, think of the crypto guys becoming the established player in the space overall.
That's a good point, I think. Look at it the other way and see them percolating up rather than who's drilling down, especially as there's so much uncertainty right now in that quote-unquote mainstream retail brokerage space. All right, we got time for one more. Let's wrap it up here with Mark. Good name, Mark. Serves me well. Mark Anderson wants to know, can you do this show every day? Loving it. Thank you very much. Well, we thank you for the love. We send that love back out to all of you. You guys have been discovering this show, and it's been fun. We've been doing it. It seems like it's a new show to me. We've been doing it for about a year now, which is kind of fun. Can we do it every day? Yeah, we probably would love to do it every day. If you probably have noticed, Mark, we do have a lot of other shows on the network as well that command our attention. And we kind of launched this show about a year ago as a bit of a feeler to see how much interest there was in the crypto derivatives space. And spoiler alert, there's a lot. And also for us, we kind of felt there was really no one talking about this particular aspect of the market. And we felt it was kind of incumbent upon us as kind of the early pioneers in derivatives-oriented audio to speak to this space and try to do it with some authority and bring some attention to this side of the space. So that's what we've been trying to do. We're glad to see you guys like it. We certainly, there's an audience for it. Maybe for our time, if we're going to do a show every day, we need a few other moving parts. Like, for example, we like to have sponsors on all of our shows. This show, we haven't had one for a while because we have a pretty high bar, as you know, for who we allow to come in and be a sponsor on our network. We want to make sure they're good, reputable firms that are knowledgeable in the space and offer something of value to you guys. And quite frankly, it's a little bit more challenging meeting that bar in the crypto space. But rather than not do a show, we'd still much rather bring you the show. It's a bit of a labor of love. So we're working to find those players in the crypto space that make sense from a sponsorship angle on this show as well. But of course, we would love if maybe, certainly from a demand side, there is demand there. So we'll see. We'll experiment with it, Mark. How about that? But for now, we'll keep it on the weekly. We do love that you guys want more. And there certainly is enough going on in this space to start parsing. And certainly as we see larger players like CME and others really starting to take an active role in this space, larger brokers maybe taking some more interest in some of these more traditional crypto venues, starting to grow and become larger players as well. As the whole space as a whole continues to grow and evolve, I think there may be an opportunity for something like that down the road. All right, so unfortunately, that music means we've come to the end of another epic journey through the world of all things crypto, derivatives, and indeed beyond. Funny how fast an hour flies, Pierce, when you're having fun. But before we go, Pierce, since you so kindly joined me in the hot seat today, obviously a lot of our audience probably already knows TradingView, but we also speak to a lot of the hardcore derivative side who maybe haven't gone over to the charting dark side of TradingView yet. So maybe if you want to leave them a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease of what's coming down the pike from your platform that may be intriguing to those guys, Pierce, now is the time. The floor is yours.
Yeah. No, thanks. Appreciate it, Mark. And again, it's amazing how fast an hour goes by. Plenty to cover. So high level, stay tuned. We do have a ton of updates coming soon. I think from your derivatives audience, we do definitely have some stuff in the pipe on the option side of things. And these are, talking about more traditional options and pricing options in chart format. It is a huge demand that we see across the board, and we hear you. So we're definitely working on that. Besides that, stay tuned. There's a lot of new partnerships coming up. The Gemini partnership obviously is the first of many, and the watershed is kind of, the watershed moment is finally upon us. So keep in touch. And no, I think that I'll come on the show in 6 months and we'll see how things go.
Check it out for yourselves, listeners, if you haven't already, at TradingView.com, just like it sounds, I should say, is how it's spelled over there. TradingView.com, the place to go. Join, I think it was 13 million, you said, other active users out there. Give them a follow on the old Twitters as well. At TradingView is the place to go. And on behalf of Pierce and myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in all those questions, for listening, for all the other fun stuff that you do. Keep it coming. And we'll see you back here next week. And I guess if Mark has his way, every day soon for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.